Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today, I have the good fortune to be joined by Mark Rampolla, who you might recognize as the founder behind Zico, coconut water, famed Shark Tank participant, famed exit to Coca-Cola, many other things. He's got a new book out that is super exciting. We're going to talk about. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Seth. I'm a big fan of the show and I've enjoyed watching it myself, so I'm honored to be here.
Well, thank you. You are too kind. So for everybody who hasn't seen the Shark Tank episode, we're going to go back in time a little bit. How did you originally come up with the idea for Zico coconut water?
Yeah, so I first my career started probably best set off the dirt path as a Peace Corps volunteer in Central America. So I first discovered coconut water there. I'd never been out of the country growing up in Pittsburgh and drank it all the time. But it wouldn't be a decade later until I was living and working back in Latin America, had a corporate job, realized that wasn't my future or dream path. So I decided to become an entrepreneur and I was looking around at lots of different ideas. And it's, almost like the coconut fell in my head. I just had been drinking it all the time and realized, wait a second, here's an incredibly healthy, natural product, better in many ways than Gatorade. Let me figure out how to bring it to the world.
And the longer version of that story is obviously in the book, which we'll dive into. So talk about you launched a beverage brand, right? Obviously it's better than water, but into a multi-billion dollar category competing against some of the biggest names on the planet. Talk to us a little bit about that journey. I know the longer version's in the book, but talk to us a little bit about some of the lessons you learned along the way.
Yeah, look, I'll give you a few lessons. I think to a certain extent, there is an audacity that one needs to have that in some ways ignorance is bliss, right? We just entrepreneurs often dive into things. Fortunately, I did do a ton of research. So I looked at every major beverage brand and other brands and the way they built. And probably the thing that worked best for me is to find an inch wide, mile deep strategy. So it took a little while to figure it out, but eventually we launched in New York and we built with Hot Yoga Studios as the post-yoga beverage, replenishment beverage of choice. And that may sound niche, but what I've learned after building Zico, but also investing behind 100 companies and running GroundForce Capital now, looking at 1,000 brands a year, is the ones that really break through start small. They start focused and narrow. One type of consumer, specific usage occasion, specific route to market and positioning, and then build from that. So that's probably the thing that worked best for us.
What were some of the unexpected hurdles you ran into as a pioneer? You basically invented a new beverage category. What were some of those unexpected hurdles and what'd you learn overcoming them?
Yeah, oh boy, so many. Great question. Look, a couple that come to mind. First of all, early on, I was amazed how many people hated the taste of coconut water. It was just an acquired taste. And so we learned very quickly to preach to the choir. We found the people that liked it best and started with kind of building influencers first and then could scale from there. Second is it seemed like we were running out of money at all times. Like I remember we raised $1 million. I thought that would last forever. We ran out of money within 6 months. And so to get good at either figuring out how to get profitable fast or get really good at raising money constantly. And the other is it takes time. Zico was a 9 year overnight success. What I've seen is every once in a while you catch lightning in a bottle. It is rare. The great businesses usually take time. 10, years is typical. Sometimes it's 20 plus. And I tell entrepreneurs, look, if you understanding that it may take you a decade of your life, you'll probably not make any money along the way, and you've got less than a 10% probability of winning, will you still go for it? Right? The ones that say yes have a shot at success.
I love that. That is an excellent entrepreneurial test question. You mentioned the influencer side. Talk a little bit about your influencer strategy before you became a household name.
Yeah, yeah. So this was, obviously, early days of the internet, let alone social media, really. And so, look, we did have some celebrities involved, some athletes, but the real influencers for us were yoga teachers. And given the strategy that we were going after, the people I wanted to win over with were the yoga instructors and owners of the studio. So, for example, New York City at the time, there were a couple dozen of them. I got to know every one of them personally, and I tried to understand their problems. What were they struggling with? They wanted traffic in their studios. So I said, look, if you put Zico in, we will go out and when we do demos on the street, we'll hand out cards that we print ourselves, driving people to your studios, right? That made them fans. The people that were up and coming yoga instructors, we ran a contest and sent some of them to go do additional training, right? So everything around those micro influencers that you could obviously get that digitally today, but there's something about the connection, the very deep, intimate connection with the value proposition you're delivering that worked for us.
That makes a lot of sense. Talk a little bit about your Shark Tank experience.
Yeah. So, look, we weren't officially on, right? We had pitched and,
Yes.
and, and gone through some of the process. But it was, I would say our challenge was constantly raising money. So I was pitching to everyone all the time. And that's one of the things that's fabulous about Shark Tank today and maybe over this era has been what it trains young people to think about, entrepreneurs to think about how to get that pitch down, how it's tight, clear, crisp. And so even though we didn't get on, going through the process and kind of exploring that across hundreds of different pitch competitions really helped me to get the message down. And that ultimately got me comfortable just constantly, learning how to cut through the noise and get a pitch that's clear, crisp, and compelling.
Awesome. How did the offer with Coca-Cola come about?
Oh boy. So they came to me and that's what was fascinating. But what was interesting is I remember running into a senior executive at Coca-Cola, not running into, he had tracked me down. And he said, Mark, you're not going to, this is very early on. He said, you're not going to believe this. We did a nationwide research on trends, not just in beverage, overall consumer trends. And Zico showed up, not just coconut water, Zico. And this would have been like 2007 or eight, 3, 4 years after we launched. And he said, can you believe that? And I said, yeah, absolutely. He said, what do you mean? How would you speculate that? I said, let me guess. You did the research with young active consumers. Yeah. You did it in New York, LA, Miami, Chicago. Yep. You targeted on health conscious and people that shopped at Whole Foods and were active. Yep. I said, you just told me we did our job, right? We were targeting the same consumers you were targeting. So their data led us to us, which was the hypothesis from the beginning.
That makes a lot of sense. And talk a little bit about how your world has changed since that acquisition.
Yeah, so this is really what I write my new book about, an entrepreneur's guide to freedom. Is on the outside everything looked perfect, right? I sold the business, made a pile of money. My investors were all very happy. My then wife and I built a beautiful beach house, millions in the bank, and I took off time, and I had a great time. I'll own that and did write a first book about the Zico journey called High Hanging Fruit. And then I became an active angel investor and wound up investing in about 40 companies and then started what was now become GroundForce Capital, a $600 million asset management firm. But when I look back, what I realize is I, like many entrepreneurs, and I've talked to thousands since then, realized I'd been following this myth, this dream. Have a great idea, work really hard, make a pile of money, then I'll be free, right? And despite being on the successful side of that, I began to look at my life and realize, God, I'm still chasing, I'm still caught up in what's next, the next million, the next deal, the next success, the next whatever. I wasn't taking care of my health. My marriage eventually fell apart. And so I started to realize, how can I build my life differently? And my conclusion was start with freedom first. And so I also see this across entrepreneurs. If you ask an entrepreneur how their business is, there's one response you get: great, amazing. How's your life? Great, amazing, right? It's like we deny feelings and anger and sadness and fear. And yet 80+% of entrepreneurs will have a mental crisis during their journey, 2 to 4 times more than the average population. So I'm trying to crack open this myth, this lie, and help people be human, have the real human experience. And what I've learned is by opening up to that process, and I offer some really specific tools and skills to help, you can actually get better results while staying sane, happy, and rational, along the way.
I think that is really important. I think very few people are actually talking about that, and nobody's talking about it the way you are talking about it. I love the idea of putting freedom first because we all want a business that, we run that doesn't run us, right?
Absolutely. You nailed it, Seth. And that's not the case for most people. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time. And when I share with them my own story that I felt that way, and I'll give you one little example. I share often with entrepreneurs. I can remember when I started to first get really afraid that I'd been kind of trapped myself in this business. It's as if I cut my emotional connection from my brain, right? And there's this adage as if there's no place for emotions in business, right? First of all, good luck. Doesn't work that way. Second of all, the latest in neuroscience, the neuroscience of manifestation is very clear on the roles emotions play in helping us achieve our dreams and goals. And so I'm blowing that myth out of the water, helping people learn how to actually feel. And that not only okay, it's a source of intelligence, what's called intuition, right? And so breaking down those barriers to help people see that I did it, and it worked for a while until it blew up, because those emotions that we don't process, they come up sideways. And I've seen it in board meetings, investor pitches, entrepreneurs, screaming at people, breaking down, having, health issues, because they're just not learning to handle the emotions that naturally come up in this journey.
Amen to that. You're preaching to the choir. For our folks watching or listening, where can they go get the book?
Amazon.com is the best place right now. So it launched a couple of weeks ago, and it just hit the bestseller list. So I'm really thrilled. The response has been fantastic.
Congratulations on that. Can you talk a little bit about the asset management firm?
Oh, yeah. So GroundForce Capital. We are a growth equity firm, so we invest typically 15 to $30 million into growth stage companies. For us, that means sort of 20 to 100 million revenue in better for you food, beverage, food service, business services as well that support brands that are growing. Some of the brands were in liquid death. A lot of people will know. We actually reacquired Zico, the company I sold to Coca-Cola, Thrive Market. We were early in Beyond Meat, Bobby Infant Formula. So we specialize in when growth gets hard. When companies are at that stage, they need capital, but they also need support from partners that have been there and been through the journey. And we really try to support our leaders, not just in the business side, but in the life side and on the personal side as well, because it's all one journey.
And where can our folks go to learn about that?
GroundForceCapital.com is the place. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so people can find me on LinkedIn. Not much of a, and then about the book is markrampolla.co. And I'm actually having such a good response from the book. I'm building out a community of entrepreneurs that can all share and learn together how to sort of come back to presence, start with freedom first, and are seeing that they get very often even better results.
That is fantastic and sorely needed. Is information about how to be part of that community, is that in the book, or do we need to go somewhere else for that?
It's in the book, and it's at markrampolla.co.
All right. Well, this has been Seth Greene for Sharkpreneur with Mark Rampolla of Zico and GroundForce Capital and markrampolla.co. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Seth. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.